Recruits at a sinister Antarctic outpost. 7 forbidden rules that unravel a spine-chilling horror. The winds howled like a pack of wolves, screaming warnings through the icy abyss of Antarctica. 6 recruits huddled together at the edge of isolation, staring into the vast white nothing. They'd all heard the stories about Station Epsilon, a research outpost infamous for its bone-chilling cold and rumored curses. But here they were, allured by a desire to be part of something greater, leaving behind worries, families, and the warm embrace of home. Among them was Sarah, a bright-eyed scientist from Boston, desperately hoping to prove herself in this frigid hell. As they entered the station, her heart raced not from excitement but dread. Captain Alex Mason greeted them with a grin, his laughter momentarily warming the room. "Welcome to paradise!" he exclaimed, though the dismissive chill of the station bit back at his words. For a moment, unease faded. Yet shadows danced against the walls, hinting at hidden secrets. As day turned to night, the sun barely dipped beneath the horizon, casting eerie silhouettes across the snow. They began to settle, curiosity laced with unease. The discovery of a dusty, old rulebook in the corner of the common room caught everyone's attention. "Do not leave the compound after sunset," read the first ominous line. Most of them chuckled nervously at what they deemed an outdated superstition, dismissing it with ghost stories from childhood. But laughter soon turned hollow as the storm outside grew furious, rattling their fragile safety. "Just the wind," Tom, ever the jokester, quipped. But as they gathered for the evening, the atmosphere thickened, festering with shadows. Sarah could see the ice-worm folklore invading her mind, slippery and cold amidst the flickering light. All of it undermined the very thing they were seeking, knowledge. When the static crackled through the radio, it silenced them. Distorted voices, warped pleas for help, echoed off the walls. Faces drained of color. "It's a malfunction," said another recruit. But Sarah felt it, a prickling chill creeping beneath her skin. Each night the whispers grew louder, more urgent, more frightening. That unshakable feeling had them second-guessing their sanity, twisting every shadow into panic. "Guys, can you hear that?" Sarah's voice trembled, her eyes darting toward the window. Nothing. Just endless snow with secrets buried beneath. Sleep eluded them, replaced with paranoia. Footsteps crunched outside, but who was it? Their shared laughter faded under the growing weight of fear. "Where's Tom?" someone whispered one night, breaking the tense silence. Panic gripped the room like a vice. The jovial nature of their camaraderie eroded, eaten away by the frigid fingers of isolation. Sarah could sense the cracks forming, could feel the terror nestle deep in their hearts. Shadows hugged their surroundings, coiling like snakes, lurking just beyond sight. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The terror escalated. Sarah stumbled upon a weather journal hidden in storage, mapping the fate of the last research team. Each page turned revealed a nightmare, chilling disappearances, unending dread, and whispers of the winters that never died. Their last entry read, "Disobey the rules and the ice will remember." The recruits, now strangers trapped in a frozen hell, felt an invisible noose tighten around their throats. Who could they trust when the night came alive with haunting echoes? All they knew was the ice was restless, and its malevolent memory was awakening. How deep? Did this horror draw its breath? Would they, too, vanish, disappearing like whispers in the Antarctic winds? The air was thick with silence, but a terrible tension simmered beneath the surface. Sarah could hardly breathe as fear coiled tighter around her chest. She clutched the journal, its brittle pages a reminder of what lay beyond their fragile walls, the void that existed just outside the compound. "Maybe Tom just wandered outside," Kyle suggested weakly, though his voice trembled. They all knew better, that the old rule echoed through their minds like a relentless chant. "Do not leave the compound after sunset." A howl sliced through the air. This one was different, more sinister, slicing through the mind like ice. It was no wind. The recruits exchanged looks. Fear had altered their features, twisted friendship into wariness. Let us search for him, Sarah urged, adrenaline pumping in her veins. She had felt Tom's laughter during their first night, his presence a comfort. But now, he was a ghost, haunting the station without a trace. Are you crazy? Fiona shot back. We can't go out there. No choice. Sarah insisted, her heart pounding against her ribs. He needs us. And with that, they turned toward the door, the cold air gusting in as they stepped outside. The sound of their boots crunching on the ice felt deafening. Snow swirled around them, obscuring their vision. The landscape was eerily transformed into an alien world, each flake a whisper, an invitation to the unknown. Fiona lost her footing, slipping into the ice. Help! She gasped, clawing at the surface with panic-stricken eyes. Kyle reached for her, but the moment hung heavy. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. Hadn't the journal warned them? Get up! We don't have time. Fiona staggered to her feet, eyes wild, and they pressed onward, hearts racing against the cold that seeped into their bones. The howling winds twisted through them like a chilling embrace. They followed the expanse of the station's perimeter. Although Sarah felt Tom's absence like a gaping wound, the weight of something unseen grew heavier with each step. Shadows loomed in the distance, flickering just beyond the edge of visibility. Were they moving to find Tom, or were they being led into a trap? Suddenly, Kyle stopped. Did you hear that? He whispered, eyes darting to the void. The wind shifted, carrying an unmistakable sound, a distant voice breaking the Arctic stillness. No, not just one voice. Multiple voices, layered and distorted, layered with anguish. Help us, it froze their blood. What is that? Fiona asked in a cracked whisper, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. Is that Tom? Sarah breathed, trembling as they strained to listen. But Czech refused to acknowledge the numbness creeping into their minds, as if the cold sought to devour not just their bodies but their thoughts too. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around them like an invisible net. They seemed to call from everywhere, each turn bringing them deeper into the white abyss. The snow beneath them shifted oddly. Was it alive? Weren't there supposed to be layers of hardened ice? Run! Shouted Fiona. But it was too late. The ground beneath them cracked. Sarah felt the world open beneath her feet. She grasped for stability, but it frayed away like the sanity slipping from their grasp. Dark tendrils of chill wrapped around her legs, pulling her down, and in that fraction of a second she caught a glimpse of something swirling below a face, lifeless, wide eyes filled with terror. Fiona and Kyle shouted, their hands reaching out, but there was no time. The ice remembered. Get her! Sarah cried, but the darkness rose, swallowing her scream. A hand nailing her from the brink. The last thing she saw was a glimmer of light above, pulling, dragging her back towards hope, but was it truly hope? The wind howled again, but the voices beneath the ice echoed louder than ever. Sarah! Silence fell, heavy like the looming shadows haunting the compound. As Sarah fought for breath upon the surface, gasping for sanity, she realized that none of them might return from this nightmare. And the most terrifying truth? They weren't alone anymore. What waited in the dark beyond the ice? Who was calling to them? Frozen dread gripped her as the whispers returned, more vicious, more desperate. Will you help us? The question hung in the air, both luring and warning. And as her heart raced, a chilling thought slithered through her mind. How many before her had answered that call? The icy grip tightened around Sarah's heart as she gasped for breath. The shadows loomed closer now, surrounding her with darkness and despair. Kyle's frantic shouts echoed hauntingly in her ears, merging with the relentless whispers that promised salvation but delivered terror. Sarah! Hold on to me! She glanced up, finding Kyle's face etched with desperation, both familiar and distant. The tendrils of cold under the ice curled around her legs, and a primal instinct to flee surged within her. She didn't want to be swallowed by the darkness. Not like Tom. Let go of me! she shouted, twisting against the pull. But it tightened, dragging her closer to the shadowy depths. Frigid fingers coiled around her ankles, nearly pulling her under. In that moment, the whispers morphed into a cacophony of pleading voices on the verge of madness. Join us, stop it!" Sarah screamed. She could feel the tears freeze on her cheeks. With a surge of will, she lunged forward, forcing herself against the icy current. Desperation fueled her movements as she clawed at the surface, her hands scraping against the icy ground until she finally felt Kyle's grip around her wrist. With a roar of sheer determination, he dragged her back, their breath mingling in panicked gasps. The darkness howled as they clawed backward, but the echoes vanished into the furious wind. "Fiona! Where's Fiona?" Kyle gasped, eyes darting frantically in the swirling snowstorm. The absence of her voice hung in the air like a shadow, and dread flooded Sarah. She had let fear blind her. They were too slow. "It doesn't matter. We need to go." But footsteps crunched nearby, a hollow sound against the plumes of rising snow. A figure emerged, no more than a silhouette draped in shadows. Sarah's breath hitched. Was it too late? Was it the spirit of lost souls recoiling from the dark? "Help us," the figure croaked, its voice mingling with the suffocating wind. "No!" Sarah shouted. Her instincts screamed to run, but the eyes of the figure bore into her, imploring her with an unholy urgency. "Don't you see? It's not just the ice. It's not just the shadows. It's a deception." The figure lurched forward, revealing a face twisted with grief. "They need us, we can't fight it alone. Get away!" Kyle gripped Sarah's arm tighter, pulling her back. But the face compelled her, eyes glimmering with a familiarity that cut deep. "Tom?" The figure grinned, but the expression was wrong, a grotesque mimicry of the friend they had lost. The moment shattered reality like glass. With a heaving breath, Sarah felt a wave of cold wash over her, clashing with the warmth of her memories. "No, you're not him. You're not Tom." Her voice cracked, breaking through the fog of doubt. In that instant, shadows peeled away from the figure, revealing the truth beneath flesh decaying, eyes sunken, a horror that clawed at her very soul. "Please don't leave me." The chilling breath of despair wrapped around her, whispering promises of a reunited friendship, yet every whisper tasted like ice. Shadows lunged for them with a speed that sent her heart racing. They were surrounded. Kyle screamed, breaking the trance. "We need to go now." Together they turned, racing back toward the compound, but every step felt heavier, as if the very earth pressed them down into the snow. The whispers rose in pitch, chanting their names, reciting their fears and echo of the horrors they wished to escape. Just as they reached the door, a guttural roar erupted behind them. The ground quaked, cracking with jagged fractures that opened like jaws ready to devour them whole. "Don't look back!" Kyle shouted, but something inside Sarah screamed to face the monstrous truth of their fate. Could it really be over? They burst into the station, hearts pounding, slamming the door just as tendrils of darkness lashed against the walls, shrieking in anguish. But they were safe. At least for now. "Tom," Kyle began, but the air crackled. That question lingered still. What were they meant to do? As they caught their breath, a chilling realization slithered into the corners of Sarah's mind. The whispers had ceased. Silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating, but it was wrong. The impending dread hung low like a weight ready to crush them. "What now?" Fiona's voice broke through the tension, eyes wide and brimming with confusion. "What now?" echoed Sarah, glancing toward the closed door. But it suddenly rattled as if something wanted to enter. And then came the voice again, clearer this time, echoing from the darkness beyond the door. "Let me in, will you help us?" The question lingered, and a bone-deep chill settled in. What awaited them outside? And would they answer the call again? The doors shook violently, reverberating through the station as if something powerful fought to break through. Each shudder sent cold tendrils of fear spiraling down Sarah's spine, freezing her to the spot. Kyle stood beside her, his hand vibrating against her arm, a mirror of her own panic. "What if it's Tom?" she whispered, her heart thudding painfully. It could be him. A desperate hope battled within her chest, threatening to crush the rational part of her mind. But the eerie whispers from outside reminded her of the truth. "They're not the same," Kyle said, voice trembling as much from the cold as from raw emotion. "He was gone, this is a trap." Just then, the rattling intensified, morphing into a soft thumping, almost like a plea. "Let me in," the voice called again, bringing a sharp chill to the air. "I can save you, we can be together again." Sarah's mind swirled with memories of Tom. Their laughter under the sun. The long hikes they took, aiming to conquer the wild. But those images twisted into something grotesque, overtaken by his final moments, a hollow shell of what he had once been. She could imagine him standing there, but the longing in the voice was not Tom. It was the darkness preying on her grief. "Don't open it!" Fiona shouted, panic flooding her eyes. She pressed her back against the wall, shaking her head in terror. The door slammed again, violently this time. "Let me in! Please! I'm still here!" Desperation seeped through the cracks, pulling at Sarah's own sense of reason. Kyle's breath quickened. "We have to find another way out, now. We can't stay here." But with each suggestion, her body felt heavier, as if the shadows were sinking her deeper into despair. The howling wind outside morphed into a chorus of despairing voices. "Join us, don't fight it, it's better on this side." Sarah couldn't move. She looked toward Kyle, whose eyes widened as he hesitated at a nearby window. There's something out there." "What?" she blurted, her heart racing. He stumbled over to her, pointing. They peered out, and what they saw sent icy dread crashing through them. Dark shapes slithered across the snow, numerous and nightmarish, like shadows of agony brought to life. The whiteness of the ice was stained with smudges that writhed and shimmered under the moonlight, grotesque figures that shouldn't be. "Too many," Kyle muttered, pulling Sarah back. "We can't let them in." The thumping at the door sounded louder, more insistent now, escalating into a wild dissonance that matched the chaos within Sarah's mind. "Help us," the voice cried again, and in that moment, Sarah felt something shift. It was more than just fear, it was a wave of compulsion washing over her, tempting her to listen. "Sarah? Are you all right?" Kyle's voice filled with concern, as he took a step closer. The conflict of emotions tore her in two. The safety of her bond with Kyle battled against the overwhelming allure of darkness outside. "Fiona!" she shouted suddenly, remembering the other girl. "Where's Fiona?" The silence that followed was deafening, an absence that gnawed at Sarah's insides. "Fiona!" Kyle's voice rose in panic, cutting through to the icy core of fear. Then came a sound from behind, a muffled cry or perhaps a moan, distant but growing louder. It echoed through the station, reverberating off the walls until it became all-consuming. Help me, stay back!" Kyle shouted, brandishing a fire extinguisher as his only weapon, his eyes frantically darting for movement, anticipating another presence. "No! It can't be her!" Sarah felt her world shatter again. She couldn't bear to lose another friend. "What do we do?" Kyle pleaded, desperation flooding his voice. But just then, the door groaned under the weight of something pushing from the other side. A dark force, an ancient will, clamored to join them. With every heartbeat, the shadows screamed louder, as if knowing Sarah's doubts. Then, like a final death knell, the door creaked open, just a crack, and the cold whispered to them once more. "Let me in or let us all out." The world they knew seemed to warp around them. The shadows pressed in, and as Sarah prepared to face whatever lay beyond, she realized the truth more terrifying than the darkness itself. If they let it in, who would they become? In that fragile moment, the choice loomed over them: fight or succumb. What would they choose? The door groaned, widening just enough for a thin shaft of moonlight to spill into the station, illuminating the swirling dust motes like lost souls drifting toward oblivion. Sarah's heart raced, a frantic drumbeat in the heavy silence, thumping against her ribs as she gripped the edge of the table, fingers digging in until her knuckles whitened. "Close it!" she shouted, adrenaline surging through her. But the words fell flat, lingered like smoke in the air, heavy and oppressive. Kyle remained frozen by the shattered window, eyes wide with terror as his mind fought against the unseen horrors lurking just beyond the door. Wait, his voice cracked, barely a whisper as he stared into the shadows, the other side a conduit of something unrecognizable, something hungry. What if it really is? Don't say it. Sarah cut him off, fear tightening around her throat like a noose. It can't be him. She stepped back, her instincts screaming at her to run, but where would they go? The darkness outside felt alive, pulsating with the heartbeat of a feral creature, while the growing voices became a cacophony, tempting, taunting. Join us, the shadows called, their whispers chilling her skin. Remember what it was like. Fiona, where are you? Kyle's voice trembled, cutting through the rising grip of terror, as he swung the fire extinguisher like a lifeline, ready to defend against whatever might come. But the shivering sound of footsteps resonated through the building, echoing from the creaky wooden floorboards, drawing closer. Then, a figure emerged from the murky light beyond the door, backlit by the white snow reflecting a sickly glow. A face peeked through, pale, hollow-cheeked, with eyes dark and sunken, searching. Help me, it seethed, a ghastly mockery of the person they once knew. Tom! Sarah gasped, hope flaring for just an instant. But even that glimmer of warmth curdled into ice as the shadows swirled, and she knew. Get away from him! Kyle yelled, lunging towards Sarah and dragging her backward before she could even process her own legs moving. It's not him! Another scream echoed, a familiar timbre now distorted, filled with grotesque agony. Please! Don't leave me! Fiona's voice cried, surfacing from the depths of the chaos, clawing its way into Sarah's heart like a dagger, but the allure was poisoned. Fiona! She cried, panic mixing with guilt as it swelled like a tide. We have to do something. We can't trust anything. It will twist your love, your memories. They're using it against us. Kyle's eyes darted between the door and the window, where more shadows gathered, pooling like ink against the stark white backdrop. But Sarah felt the weight of despair creeping in, a tidal wave threatening to drown her. What if they were truly lost? What if this was all a terrible game? The weighty choice bore down on her, fragile and merciless. Listen! The voice from outside strained, desperate, almost human. You have to trust me. With every word, the whispers grew louder, more hypnotic, clawing at her resolve. The boundary between reality and shadows began to waver, blurring in Sarah's mind like a roiling storm. Visions of what they had lost danced before her eyes, glimpses of Tom, Fiona, framed in happier times, then twisting into grotesque forms, clawing at her. Sarah, we're breaking, Kyle said, his voice rising in urgency, and she could see it in his eyes, the dawning horror of hopelessness, the fear of becoming another shadow in the darkness. As the door pushed further, the breath of something malevolent slipped inside, freezing them both in its wake. Let us in, be with us again, don't fight it. Terror surged as shadows pulled at their feet, beckoning. Her heart raced, caught between the dread of the unknown and the haunting echoes of friendship. They were in this frozen hell. Don't open it, Kyle pleaded, desperation twisting his features. But the voices swelled, a symphony of madness drawing her closer, shredding her resolve. Before she could reply, they heard a loud crash from the other side of the station. Then a cacophony of screams erupted. Sarah's blood ran cold as the realization hit her. What if the shadows were right? Are we too late? She managed to gasp. With the crashing at the door and the deafening cries of despair filling the station, their very essence hanging by a thread, Sarah and Kyle stared into an abyss of darkness that promised obliteration. And just then, her instincts roared to life. She knew what had to be done. The door lay cracked open before them, shadows swirling like a tempest. We have to fight. We have to forget them. Kyle shouted, but would they? And as the shadows surged forward, wild and violent, the choice loomed above them, monstrous. Would they let the night consume them? Fight. Or would they, too, become part of the endless darkness, trapped between this world and the next? As they prepared for what was to come, one truth echoed in Sarah's mind: how far would she go to save those she loved? The shadows twisted and writhed, their shapes curling in on themselves, reaching for Sarah and Kyle like ghostly hands. The air turned sharp, every breath a painful reminder of the reality they faced. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the voices outside that pleaded, taunted, yanked at her heart. "Close your eyes," Kyle shouted, gripping the fire extinguisher as if it were a weapon from a forgotten battle. "Just hold on to me." But Sarah was anchored to the spot, torn between the desire to stay and fight or the instinctual urge to flee. The nightmares they once laughed about were creeping into reality, claws extending through the door's opening, eager to drag them into the abyss. Tom! Fiona! The names echoed in her mind like a dirge, haunting and heavy. A wave of anger surged through her. "They need us. We can't leave them." Kyle's grip tightened, desperation etched into his face. "They're not them anymore. It's a trick. Look at them." The hiss of the shadows was maddening, swirling into a form almost recognizable. It was Tom, but wore a twisted grin that sent ice through her veins. "Help me, Sarah." He glided through the shadows, not quite human, but not entirely lost either. "Don't listen!" Kyle screamed, his voice raw, shattering the moment. He stepped forward, ready to swing the extinguisher at whatever came through the door. The whispers grew louder, resonating with familiar tones. "You know us, you remember, don't you want to come home? I want to help. You can't think like this." The pleading in her voice faded as doubt crept in. What if there really was a way to save them? The warmth of their memories coalesced with the chill of reality, turning determination into confusion. "Sarah!" Kyle's shout jolted her back, but it was too late. Shadows whirled, embracing her, almost lovingly. "I can't!" she screamed, shaking her head to dispel the chaos. "Fight this! Remember who you are!" he roared, breathless with anxiety as his body tensed, prepared for a fight against the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, a deafening crash erupted from the other end of the station, shaking the very foundation beneath their feet. The cacophony of screams outside morphed into something unrecognizable, 100 voices merging into one horrific chorus. "They're coming! We have to move!" Kyle shouted, fear driving every syllable. "Where?" Sarah's voice trembled, eyes darting between the cracked door and the desperation creeping in through the shattered window. "We barricade the door." Kyle pushed her toward the nearest desk. The shadows hesitated, just for a moment, as if reassessing their approach. "Yes," she said, gathering her disbelief and fear into something solid. She rushed toward the table, her heart thrumming like a war drum. As she pushed, the whispers wrestled for her attention, desperate, pleading. "Join us, endless peace." The air thickened, suffocating. Goosebumps erupted on her skin. As they shoved the desk against the door, Sarah stole a glance at Kyle. His face was taut, lined with sweat and panic. "It won't hold," he shouted, as the darkness resumed its slow creep. "We need to find another way." Somewhere in the distance, the screams culminated into a heart-wrenching wail that cut through the murky air like a knife. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as that noise twisted into the sound of Fiona's laughter, once warm, now a shrill mockery. "Can you hear her?" Sarah murmured, loss flooding her body. "Stop! Don't listen! It's not real!" Kyle shouted, wrenching her back to reality. But the choice loomed large. They could stay to fight against the darkness, but with every passing second, it felt more like a losing battle. An image flickered in Sarah's mind: Fiona's bright eyes, Tom's infectious grin. The shadows pressed closer, the hourglass emptying faster. "Can we really trust ourselves?" she questioned, her voice a mere whisper against the gale of whispers. Kyle's expression darkened. "If we lose our resolve, then it's over." Panic clawed at Sarah's chest as the shadows began to seep inside, a swirling, living nightmare. The screams intensified, drowning out everything else. Just when they thought they were done, two figures stumbled into the doorway, gaunt, eyes wide with terror. "Help us!" they cried in unison, but it was all too much, too familiar. "Who are you?" Kyle shouted, raising the fire extinguisher defensively as Sarah's stomach twisted in recognition. With breaths shallow and hearts racing, they faced the impending doom together, only to realize that what lay before them wasn't salvation, it was yet another nightmare born of the darkness. Could they handle this new twist of fate? Would the shadows keep clawing for their souls? As the figures stepped closer, their identities blurred in the dim light, the air electric with dread. And in that moment before the darkness consumed them, Sarah felt a haunting certainty nothing would ever be the same again. "Who are you?" she dared to ask. But the shadows answered first, murmuring in a tone that made her blood run ice cold, "We are your past." The figures lurched into the dim light, their hollow eyes wide and searching for something they couldn't quite grasp. The shadows swirled around them, decorating the air with hushed whispers that crept beneath Sarah's skin. She could hardly see their faces clearly, but she knew their outlines too well. They were the shells of her friends, yet inhabited by the very thing that sought to destroy them. "Get away from them!" Kyle's voice broke through the haze, but it barely masked the tremor beneath, revealing the fear he tried to suppress. The shadows recoiled, momentarily pulling back as if testing the air, teasing a new wave of torment. "Is that you, Sarah?" One figure stepped forward, and with it came a familiar voice heavily laced with dread. "Please help us, Fiona?" Sarah's heart sank. There was no mistaking it. The shadows warped her friend's image, but the recognition twisted a fresh ache within her chest. "What have you? What's happening?" Fiona's smile, once genuine, now grotesquely contorted, sparked a flicker of hope in Sarah. Clinging to it, she took a shaky step closer, the instinct to comfort overwhelming her fear. "I thought we lost you. Help," Fiona breathed, the syllables wrapping around Sarah like a vine, constricting and squeezing. "They won't let us go. We need you. It's a trap," Kyle warned, ready to swing the fire extinguisher again. "They're feeding off your doubt. You can't trust them." "I can hear them," Sarah. Fiona's voice warped into a chilling whisper. "They want you with us. Just let go." Sarah shook her head violently as shrill echoes of laughter cascaded through the air, filling the room with a rancid dread. She gripped the desk tighter, knuckles whitening. "You're not Fiona. You're something else." "No!" The figure swayed, arms outstretched as if reaching for the warmth of her belief. "I'm right here. This is just a shadow of the old me. We can be whole again." Before she could respond, Tom's figure lurked behind Fiona, his grin a jagged gash on his face. "Sarah, join us. We can escape this." He extended his hand, the shadows swirling to embrace him like a protective cloak. The tension in the room thickened, and Kyle surged forward, blocking Sarah's view. "No! You can't let this happen!" His frantic gaze darted to the barricaded door, where shadows pulsed like a heartbeat, drumming loudly against the wood. "They want to drag you down." The figures twisted into shadows again. The truth was almost worse than the terror. They intertwined effortlessly, lost between longing and despair, seducing Sarah's heart with tantalizing promises of relief. "Think about it," Sarah Tom cooed almost sweetly, the malevolence hidden behind the veneer of friendship. "Who can save you now?" "Only us." The air shifted again, thick with the despair of reality unraveling. "What if we're too late?" Sarah's voice trembled, uncertainty gnawing at her resolve. "What if it really is a way out?" "Fight!" Kyle roared, breathless but determined, advancing toward the figures. "Remember the last time we laughed together? The time we all sat around a campfire? That's not them." Sarah's heart raged a war. But with every second, hope flickered out more and more, leaving only dread, an echoing scream that twisted through her blood. As she looked into the teetering abyss, the whispers fused again, louder, more frantic. Join us, they drowned the remnants of her conviction, blending into a singular, horrifying sound that bore into her mind, taunting her sanity. "Sarah!" Kyle hurled the fire extinguisher against the wall, the resounding clatter shaking her from the grip of desire. "This is your final chance. Who do you trust?" A pulse throbbed in Sarah's ears, louder than the shadows. Her friends or Kyle, the whispers or reality? The bitter sadness seeped into her bones as the figures shifted at the door, hungry and desperate. But then, a more distant scream froze her blood. This one wasn't just a cry, it was visceral, primal, a warning echoing through nightmares. It came from somewhere within the shadows, a harbinger of horror that reached out to her. "Get them out! Before They become part of this. The truth clawed at her mind. Kyle's eyes held her with a fierce desperation. Now! What came next was a blur, a decision barely made in fear-laden haste. Sarah broke into a sprint, shoving past the reeling shadows, her heart in her throat as she seized Kyle's arm, pulling him back just as the figures lunged forward. Would it be enough? Would they escape or become another wisp in the dark? A new sound erupted behind them, shattering glass, like the world splintering away. Sarah glanced back, mind swirling with panic. The shadows, stilled as an ominous cloud of agony, overshadowed the remnants of their twisted forms. In that dizzying moment, the figures morphed again, their screams echoing against her skin. "Help us," they chorused, now a chaotic symphony of loss and dread. And as they melted back into the darkness, Sarah finally understood the only thing scarier than what was waiting outside was what she was running from. "Let us go!" she yelled, the words barely making sense through her haze of panic. But a deafening roar drowned out everything as the shadows writhed into chaos. Sarah and Kyle turned, hearts racing with unfathomable fear, their terror stretching toward a bloody daylight. What lay ahead became obscured in swirling darkness, revealing an unimaginable truth that loomed, and suddenly, Sarah felt the real weight of their situation. As the shadows lunged once more, distorting reality, she wondered if the grip of the past would ever truly let go. The darkness surged around them, engulfing Sarah and Kyle in a suffocating shroud. Their breaths quickened, each heartbeat echoed like a drum, frantic and wild. The shadows clawed at them, whispering and hissing, a cacophony of voices overlapping, begging and pleading. It felt as if the very air was turning to ice, pressing against their chests, squeezing down their hopes into desperate whispers. "Run!" Kyle shouted, the command a desperate plea as he yanked Sarah forward, dragging her into the chaos. As they sprinted, the lingering cries of their friends morphed into malevolent laughter, taunting them, teasing the fear his voice had tried to drown. They burst through the door, an eruption into the unknown. Outside, the world swam in murky darkness, the moon barely a flicker through the frantically swirling clouds. An abandoned courtyard loomed ahead, a graveyard of shadows and broken hopes. The wind screamed past, a sound both mournful and furious, amplifying their terror. "Where do we go?" Sarah panted, glancing back. The figures had not followed. For that moment, they were free, but the shadows lingered, pulsating at the edges of her vision. "Anywhere but here," Kyle responded, urgency slicing through his tone. Together, they propelled forward, racing toward a command post dimly lit by the flickering flame of an emergency lantern. Each step was a battle against the grasping darkness that lapped hungrily at their heels. Sarah could feel the pull of despair clawing at her mind, dragging her thoughts back to the figures inside. Were they gone? Were her friends gone for good? A sudden crash reverberated through the compound, making them freeze. It came from the command post. The door slammed open as if welcoming a storm. "Can't stop. Move," Kyle urged, fear igniting determination in his voice. They sprinted, hearts thrumming, feet pounding the earth. They were almost to the door when it slammed shut again, trapping them in the grip of night. The shadows roared back to life, coiling around them, whispering filthy promises that fed on their fear. A chilling realization flooded Sarah's mind. This wasn't merely a physical threat. It was a manifestation of every doubt, fear, and darkest thought that feasted upon their souls. "Get it together." Kyle's words cut through the dread, but the shadows danced at the edges of their perception, beckoning to them with remnants of what they had lost. "We can't lose hope." "Hope?" she scoffed, bitter laughter spilling from her lips. "What if hope is the trap? What if it leads us back to them?" Silence fell, thick as fog. The shadows moved in closer, the laughter gone, replaced by a sinister tranquility that was more unsettling than any scream. Their eyes began to trace shapes in the darkness, grotesque manifestations of fear and despair. Dread twisted Sarah's gut. "Look!" Kyle pointed to the blackened remains of a door at the far corner of the compound. "We can still try to escape through there." But before they could make a move, a figure emerged, cascading darkness swirling around it, contorts of grotesque familiarity. "Sarah." "Kyle." It was a bled-out version of Fiona, her contorted grin stretching unnaturally across her face. You can't leave. We need you. You chose to come. You can't run now. The ground beneath them trembled slightly, the shadows boiling, energized by their fear. No! Stay back! Kyle spat, raising his arm as if to block her. You're not Fiona! Sarah froze, panic clawing at her throat. The other figures appeared behind Fiona, the tortured faces of their friends blending into one horrific montage, merging into a solid mass of warped shapes. You belong with us, Sarah, forever. Don't listen to them! Kyle shouted, his voice laced with raw desperation. He grabbed Sarah's hand, instilling a thread of resolve through their frantic connection. But Sarah felt the weight of the figure's gaze, each pair of eyes piercing through her with the collective intent of an unfathomable darkness. I can't fight this! She gasped, the battle within her raging, a tempest of loyalty and despair. What if they're right? No! Kyle's grip tightened, a lifeline in a storm. You're stronger than this. Remember who you are. Remember us. The shadows twisted, howling in protest. They surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness, hungry for their despair. In that chaotic moment, the world appeared to ripple. Every laugh, every memory shared twisted in on itself, each a weapon against them. Sarah's mind raced, drowning in the cacophony of doubt and regret. She could almost feel the shadows wrapping around her heart. Fight! Fight for what we had! Kyle yelled, desperation sharpening his words. With a surge of adrenaline, desperation sparked within, battling the darkness that threatened to consume her whole. No! The shout echoed through the command post, a challenge to the shadows looming over them. They stood together, defiance igniting in tandem, refusing to become part of the twisted mass behind Fiona. But as they rallied their strength, an invisible force surged through the air, a palpable dread as the figures shrieked and lunged forward. The door groaned ominously behind them. What lay on the other side could be freedom or doom. But as Sarah looked to Kyle, the shadows beckoned, and the reality of her choice slammed against her. Are we ready? She whispered, heart racing with uncertainty. With a devastating crash, the darkness swirled, and they were almost lost. Go now! But in the clash of realities opening before them, only chaos awaited. Would they break free or be consumed? Time hung heavy between them, and the shadows promised, you'll find us again. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, thick with despair and uncertainty. Sarah's heart raced as the shadowed figures lurched forward, melding into a monstrous mass that teemed with malign intent. Kyle's grip on her hand tightened, a precarious anchor amid the chaos. Now, Sarah! We need to take a chance! He shouted, his voice barely cutting through the swirling din around them. Panic broke free within her, exploding like light in an oppressive darkness. With a deep breath, Sarah propelled herself toward the door, instinct guiding her through the madness. Just as they reached it, it swung open, revealing an abyss that looked more like the end than a beginning. But desperation led them through. Once past the threshold, the world outside swirled with an even deeper void, a cavernous blackness that devoured all light. It was colder here, so much colder that it bit into their skin. The echoes of their friends' voices faded on the other side, replaced by chilling silence. Where are we? Sarah gasped, shivering as dread seized her. I don't know, but we can't stop, Kyle urged, fear sharpening his features. The surrounding void felt alive, pulsating around them, watching, waiting. They stumbled into an expanse that extended beyond the reach of reason. Twisted metal and decaying structures loomed like jagged teeth in the ominous dark. A bone-chilling wind whistled through the remnants, carrying faint whispers that seemed to crawl under their skin. Keep moving! Kyle pushed her forward, but the whispers grew louder, a dissonant choir of torment that seemed to seep from the very walls. Do you hear that? She asked, every nerve screaming as a sense of danger grew stronger. Focus! We have to! A piercing scream shattered the atmosphere. It echoed throughout the desolate place, sending a shockwave of terror through them. They froze, their bodies tense with fear. What was that? Sarah whispered, heart pounding in her ears. Something is in here with us, Kyle said, looking around frantically. His breath came in sharp bursts, and she could see the glimmer of their fading hope reflected in his eyes. They had no choice but to advance, moving swiftly yet quietly, every movement pregnant with anxiety. The scent of rust wafted through the air, stinging their noses. Each creaking sound made them jump, the shadows shifting, twisting their forms into lurid shapes that threatened to draw nearer. Then they came upon a room, flickering with an eerie glow. Inside, it was strewn with relics, photographs of faces distorted by fear. Each image seemed alive, eyes pleading for rescue, mouths screaming without sound. Their expressions twisted in an unseen torment. "What the hell is this place?" Kyle breathed, stepping closer to inspect one of the photos. They didn't just vanish. They suffered. His voice trailed off, and a cold shiver swept over Sarah. "This can't be happening, we need to get out of here," she shouted, backing away as overwhelming horror flooded her senses. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A voice boomed through the chamber, layered with distortion, deep and guttural. "Why are you here?" Kyle instinctively pulled Sarah back, but the swirling shadows from before seeped into the room, matching every heartbeat with their own dark rhythm. "We're not here to stay. We want to leave," he yelled defiantly, though doubt crept into his voice. The shadows surged forward, forming shapes of grotesque familiarity, friends, twisted and contorted. Each one looked to Sarah and Kyle with a lost and pleading gaze. "Join us, Sarah," they chorused, the timbre echoing with an unsettling familiarity that made her stomach churn. "You belong here forever." "No!" she gasped, a wave of visceral horror crashing over her. "You're not them." But their figures loomed closer, their faces morphing into a cacophony of nightmares, deep-rooted fears, and unfulfilled promises. The sinister chant grew louder, urging her to step forward, to surrender. "Fight it!" Kyle's shout tore through her reverie. "We have to break free of this place." A sudden realization ignited her spirit. This confrontation was not just a struggle to escape. It was a battle for their very souls. "We can't lose to this," she whispered, steeling herself as panic surged anew. "Then let us find a way out," Kyle insisted, raw determination fueling his words. "There has to be something here." As they scanned their surroundings, the weight of inevitable doom pressed down. Shadows threatened to consume them entirely, every heartbeat echoing with the sinister whisper of entrapment. Sarah, Kyle, the invitation was an undertow, pulling at their legs. It promised comfort but concealed terror. "Which way?" Sarah asked, a piercing voice of urgency amid the flurry of confusion. "Look there!" Kyle pointed toward a glimmer of light peeking through the thick shadow. "We go toward the light." "We have to." But as they turned to run, the shadows lunged. The room shrieked, a cacophony of twisted dreams and nightmarish calls resonating within. "Keep running!" Kyle yelled, but they were almost too late. What if the light led to something worse? What if the shadows were closer than they thought? The pulse of darkness quickened, and uncertainty reignited its grasp. They took a step forward, desperation merging with dread. Would the light save them or lead to their final embrace? The icy grip of despair tightened around Sarah and Kyle as they plunged toward the flicker of light beckoning within the shadows. Each step felt like a race against the darkness, insatiable, creeping closer, whispering promises of security and fate. Time twisted and warped, pressing down upon them like the weight of an unraveling thread that threatened to sever their last connection to hope. As they sprinted, the voices grew more frantic, mingling with the falling echoes of laughter that morphed into chilling mockery. "You chose to come!" they chorused like a haunting melody, calling them back to the chilling familiarity of the past they tried to escape. Sarah's heart raced, battling the surge of despair that clawed at her self-control. How could she resist the mournful harmony of her lost friends? It tugged at her soul, wanting to wrap her in the warmth of memories long withering on the vine. "Don't look back!" Kyle shouted, his raw voice waking her from the weighty grasp of the shadows, spurring her forward. "There lies. We have to trust ourselves." They reached the light, a doorway lit almost ethereally in the vast grasp of nothingness. It thrummed softly, resonating with energy a stark contrast to the devouring darkness. The moment they arrived at the threshold, Sarah hesitated. Doubt twisted her insides. What if it's a trap? Her voice trembled, uncertainty pooling in her gut. Better a risk than standing here, Kyle urged, eyes wide and alive with determination. Together, they shoved through the frame, bursting into a new chamber bathed in a blinding light that seared their retinas. The warmth was overwhelming. It engulfed them like a tender embrace, washing over their skin, ridding them of the cold that held them captive for far too long. Through the chaos of white light, they glimpsed movement, a large, circular room with strands of shadows weaving back into darkness at the wall's edges. In its center lay a pulsating orb. It glowed with a fiery intensity, thrumming as if alive. "What is this?" Sarah breathed, the confusion dispersing as determination surged through her. She felt it even beneath layers of ice they had fought too hard to lose hope now. A distant rumble echoed throughout the chamber, vibrating deep within their souls. Kyle took a tentative step forward, his face illuminated by the surreal light. "Whatever this is, it feels different." "Different how?" Sarah asked, confusion mingling with intrigue. But before he could answer, the shadows, having followed them through the door, attacked. They emerged from the edges, swirling like a dark storm, attempt to engulf them yet again. "Sarah!" Kyle shouted, yanking her back as cold fingers gripped at her ankles. The shadows were relentless, howling, shrieking for them with desperate craving. "They want us to give in!" Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the tide of chaos. "We can't!" She felt an awakening inside her, a spark igniting. She locked eyes with Kyle, grounding her fear. "We need to stand together. It's our only chance." Kyle nodded, igniting strength of his own. Together, they approached the orb. Its light reverberated confidence, radiating through her chest, filling her with energy, a reminder of their shared past and the love for their friends they had not surrendered. "Let us focus," Kyle exclaimed, gripping her hand tighter. "We can fight this. Our memories of them, of laughter, friendship, will guide us. It's what is worth saving." As they focused on the orb, a brilliant light erupted from their united energy. The shadows recoiled, chased back like flames licking at the night. "We remember!" they shouted together. Starlit memories streamed through them, moments of joy, laughter, and hope, each one a weapon against the night. They hurled their combined energy toward the shadows. It surged through the air, crashing against the darkness with tangible force. "Join us!" The shadows screamed as their cries turned to wails of despair. "You can't escape. You belong to us." "No! We choose friendship!" Sarah screamed back, channeling the warmth of past connections, trusting that love would lead them through. And as they did, the orb pulsed fiercely, bright enough to engulf them in radiant light. The shadows shrieked one final time, swirling desperately against the relentless tide that surged through the room. As their essence began to break, a cacophony of cries filled the air, the whispers silencing as they dissipated into the ether. With one final pulse, shimmering light washed over everything. Then silence fell, heavy and serene. As Sarah opened her eyes again, warmth surrounded them, a new world spread before them. It gleamed with sunlight filtering through tall trees, painting everything gold. Where are we?" she murmured, each breath rich with life, free from the ice. "I think we're safe," Kyle replied, his face alight with relief and wonder. The shadows gone, they stood amongst a glade, alive with vibrant colors and soothing breezes. And there, beyond the trees, flickered memories of their friends Tom and Fiona, glimpsed on the edges of this new world, smiling brilliantly, free from pain. This wasn't the end, it was a new beginning. "Look!" Sarah pointed, heart soaring as life surged through the bright landscape. For every shadow lost, a star sparkled brighter. They had chosen connection, hope in the face of despair. With resolve, they stepped into this new dawn, ready to be the kind of light that darkness could never consume. "Let us move on," Kyle said, squeezing her hand. With that, they forged ahead, no longer prisoners of the past, but creators of their future. Side by side, they would face life anew. Time would show what lay ahead, but they cross that bridge together. Don't forget, the adventure doesn't end here. You need to subscribe now to catch our next exclusive stories. Come on, smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Also, don't wait even one more second to flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this wild conclusion. You're part of this journey, and your voice matters. Share this thrilling conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Let's spread this story far and wide.